My honeymoon was a scam. He used my credit cards to book a luxury resort, then I found out I was wife 5 in a sick scheme. He had 4 other wives, called me beach chick on his calendar, and told friends he'd break me in and cash me out. When I confronted him, he smirked. It's just business. He left me stranded abroad with no passport or money. But I emailed every wife and we all met to end his game for good. When I say my honeymoon was a scam, I'm not exaggerating. I was sitting in a 5-star resort in the Dominican Republic, staring at a $12,843 bill I apparently owed. Because every single thing on that trip, from the flights to the room, was charged to my credit card. And the man I thought was my husband, my brand new husband, was gone, just gone. His name was Ryan, or at least that's the name he used with me. He left early that morning saying he was going to pick up a special wedding surprise. I didn't think twice. But when he didn't come back for hours and I tried calling his phone, it went straight to voicemail. That's when I checked our shared travel folder in my email, something he'd set up so we could organize our honeymoon details. Except when I opened it, I found a backup folder titled Game Log. And that's when my stomach fell out of my body. Inside were screenshots of conversations, names, dates, photos of women, 4 of them, each labeled in a shared Google Calendar: Mountain Girl, Vegas Babe, Nashville Cutie, and then me, Beach Chick. My wedding date was right there on the calendar, next to cash out 2 weeks post-trip. I froze. My hands shook so badly I could barely scroll. There were jokes between him and some friend named T, bragging about how he'd perfected the rotation. And that beach chick, that's me, looked like the best investment yet. Investment. Not wife, not love, investment. I think I stopped breathing. My entire relationship replayed in my mind, how he'd swept me off my feet, the sudden proposal, how he insisted on taking care of everything for the wedding but had me just use my cards to build credit for our future. How proud he'd sounded saying it. When the hotel manager knocked on my door asking for a payment method, since the original card was declined, I realized he hadn't even paid the deposit. The shared honeymoon fund he told me he wired never existed. I stood there, barefoot on the tile floor of a luxury suite that suddenly felt like a crime scene, and whispered to myself, "He scammed me. He actually scammed me." The staff confiscated my passport until the bill was settled. I had $83 in my account. I was stuck in a foreign country, legally married to a man who'd probably done this before and probably would again. But the thing is, Ryan made one mistake. He didn't delete the contact list tied to that Google Calendar. He left all the other women's email addresses visible. So, while I sat there broke, humiliated, and furious, I opened my laptop and started writing. I typed out an email with the subject line, "You don't know me, but I think we share a husband." Then I hit send. The first reply came within an hour, then another, then another. By the next morning, there were 4 women on a Zoom call, all crying, all holding up wedding rings that looked exactly like mine. And that's when we decided to meet. Not to cry, not to move on, but to ruin him. Before all this blew up, I thought Ryan was the best thing that ever happened to me. We met in a Target parking lot in Austin, Texas. My car wouldn't start, and he offered to help jump it. He had this confident, easy smile, and when he joked that I owed him a coffee for roadside assistance, I laughed and said yes. That was how it started, casual, charming, harmless. He worked in private investments, which sounded fancy but vague. He always had these quick answers that made me feel dumb for even asking questions. Real estate partnerships, crypto ventures, business lending, buzzwords, basically. But he dressed nice, paid in cash sometimes, and always had an explanation that made sense in the moment. I didn't realize how much I wanted to believe him. At the time, I was 32, just out of a 5-year relationship that ended because my ex cheated. I told myself I wanted stability, and Ryan seemed to have it. He'd open doors, plan surprise weekends, talk about our future. He even introduced me to his brother on FaceTime, a man I now know probably wasn't related to him at all. Looking back, there were little things that should have screamed run. He never stayed at my place more than a couple nights in a row. His phone was always on Do Not Disturb after 9 p.m. He said he traveled for work a lot, and when he did, he'd go silent for a day or two, then come back with flowers and pictures from client dinners. But the thing that really sealed it was the way he talked about building a life together. He made spreadsheets about joint savings goals, offered to handle all the financial logistics, because I'm good with numbers, babe. It wasn't that he forced it. He made me want to let him take control. We got engaged after just 8 months. Everyone told me it was fast, but he made it sound romantic. When you know, he'd say, kissing my forehead. Our wedding was small, just a courthouse ceremony and dinner with his friends. No family. He said his parents had passed, and his brother couldn't travel due to work. I felt bad questioning him. I wanted to believe I'd finally found a man who was serious, who wasn't going to hurt me. Before the honeymoon, he told me, "Let me book everything, it's my treat, but I'll use your card to get the points since we'll merge accounts after." It sounded logical. I didn't even blink. The night before we left, he surprised me with matching luggage and whispered, "I'm going to take care of you forever." I remember that moment so vividly because I believed him with every cell in my body. Now I know that same line was probably said to every woman he conned, word for word. After I found the other wives, we compared stories. We all had the same luggage, the same ring, the same hotel chain, the same speech about credit building. He didn't just scam us, he copied and pasted his entire personality like a template. That's when something in me shifted. It wasn't just heartbreak anymore. It was fury. He thought he could rotate us like investments, like we weren't even people. He underestimated one thing, though: women talk. And when we started piecing together the timelines, we realized something huge. One of the women, Hannah, Vegas babe, still had access to a shared cloud drive he forgot to revoke. And what she found in there changed everything. The cloud drive was the key. Hannah texted our group chat late one night, "You guys need to see this." Inside that drive were dozens of folders labeled by location: Austin, Denver, Tampa, Portland, Vegas. Each one had photos, contracts, receipts, even scanned marriage licenses. It was like a digital crime scene. He had 5 legal marriages under different aliases. In one state, he was Ryan Hale. In another, Dylan Reese. Each identity had its own LLC, bank account, and matching story. But the part that made my blood run cold was the spreadsheet titled Asset Rotation. Each tab had a name. Mine said Ava Beach Chick. Under it were columns labeled Initial Deposit, Return Potential, and Target Exit Date. I wasn't a person to him. I was literally a line item. Under Notes, he'd written, "Emotionally fragile, risk low. Potential for post-trip payout equals high if guilt triggered." I had to stop reading. I was shaking so badly I almost dropped my laptop. He had a full-on system, wedding the women, getting access to their credit or savings, and then vanishing right after a romantic trip. He'd build trust fast, gain joint account access, and disappear before any paperwork caught up. Each of us had our own story of humiliation. Hannah had co-signed a car for him. Mia, mountain girl, had taken out a personal loan to invest in his business. Leela, Nashville cutie, had put him on her health insurance. And Sasha, Tampa wife, had actually introduced him to her parents as her forever person. All 5 of us were broke, angry, and legally tied to a man who didn't exist. We started digging deeper. Mia had a cousin who worked in cybersecurity, and he traced one of Ryan's Shell LLCs to an address in Phoenix, Arizona. When we pulled up the Google Street View, it was a small, rundown house with multiple mailboxes, and the same black Audi parked out front in 3 different photos. We had him, or at least we thought we did. We started planning. We agreed to meet in person, halfway between all of us in Dallas. I'll never forget walking into that hotel conference room and seeing 4 women who looked like me, same tired eyes, same ring, same damn heartbreak. We hugged like sisters. That night, we made a plan. We'd build a timeline, file group fraud reports, and go public if we had to. But first, we needed proof he was still active, so we created a fake profile. A woman he couldn't resist. Rachel, 30, loves travel, financially independent. We used photos from a stock site and carefully crafted the bio to fit his pattern. Within 3 days, he matched with her on a dating app. Same opening line, same smooth act. He was in Scottsdale, using a new alias, Evan Blake. And then we saw something even worse in his messages, something that made our plan go from revenge to survival. He wasn't just after women anymore. He was talking to a single mom about helping manage her child's college fund. And that's when I realized we had to stop him before someone else got hurt. We thought we were all victims. We thought we were 5 women scammed by the same con artist, united by rage and humiliation. But as it turned out, one of us wasn't who she said she was. It was Hannah, Vegas babe. She'd been the one with the cloud drive, the one who found the spreadsheet, the one who always seemed one step ahead. But there were little red flags that didn't add up. Like how she always deflected questions about her timeline with him, or how she never wanted to show her marriage license. She'd say, "It's too painful to look at right now," and we didn't push. We were too busy plotting revenge. But when Mia's cousin, the cybersecurity guy, started digging into the metadata from that shared drive, he noticed something strange. The last upload didn't come from Ryan's device. It came from Hannah's. We confronted her on Zoom the next night. It started calm, just clarifying questions. But when Mia asked point-blank, "Why does the cloud data show your device ID?" Hannah froze. Then she laughed, low and bitter. "Because I helped him build it," she said. "You could have heard a pin drop. She told us she used to be his partner." Not wife, partner, as in she helped him run the scam. They'd met years earlier in Vegas, when she was working at a high-end casino. She was good at reading people, good at making Marks feel special. Ryan saw that and turned it into a business model. Together, they designed his wife rotation plan. She'd help him identify women, manage fake documents, and launder the money through shell LLCs. It was a system, part romance, part theft. And she admitted she'd been in on it for 3 years, until he turned on her. Apparently, she was supposed to be retired after the Vegas scam cycle. He promised her a payout. But he ghosted her instead, took all their money, and disappeared. That's why she joined our group. She wasn't just a victim, she wanted revenge too. But the thing that made me sick was how calculated she still was. She admitted she'd kept the cloud drive not out of guilt, but as insurance. If he ever tried to come for her again, she'd have leverage. I remember asking her, "So you were okay with him ruining people's lives until he ruined yours?" She didn't even flinch. "It's just business," she said. "He said that to me first. Guess it stuck." That line hit me like a punch. The same words he used when I confronted him at the resort. "It's just business, sweetheart." Now I understood where he got it, from her. The call ended in chaos. Mia was crying, Sasha was yelling, and I just sat there staring at Hannah's face on the screen, realizing the woman who'd brought us together had been part of the machine that destroyed us. But once the shock wore off, something unexpected happened. Hannah said she still had access to one of his active bank accounts, an account he thought she didn't know about, and she offered us a deal. If we helped her expose him, she'd give us the login details. But she wanted one thing in return. She wanted to be the one to face him first. After the Zoom exploded, we spent the next 48 hours in a fever. There was no time for moral agonizing, only logistics. He'd built an industrial-strength con around romance and paperwork. We were going to dismantle it the only way that made sense, by attacking the parts he thought were bulletproof. Bank accounts, the narrative he sold to strangers, reputation. Hannah's access to that one bank account was our entry point. She sent the login like it was a detonator, a username, a password, a list of recent transfers. There were small deposits, withdrawals in different states, a wire to a shell company in Phoenix that matched the address Mia's cousin flagged. Seeing the numbers together made my stomach flip. This was real money, not just emotional theft. We split into roles instinctively. I took research, digging through his aliases and cross-checking addresses, wedding licenses, and names on corporate filings. Mia handled the tech, setting up burner phones, a fake company email, and the Rachel profile that had baited him in Scottsdale. Sasha dealt with victims' paperwork, pulling together credit card statements, loan docs, anything that proved financial harm. Leela began mapping the travel timeline to pin down where he'd be next. Hannah, awkwardly, we all felt it would be our face. She wanted to be the first to confront him, and she had reasons I didn't trust but couldn't ignore. She knew how he moved, how he got defensive, what made him fold. We decided against immediate vigilante cash grabs. We weren't stupid. We wanted legal teeth beneath our anger. We filed joint reports in 3 states the next morning. We bundled evidence into a tidy packet. Screenshots, bank transfers, marriage certificates, the asset rotation spreadsheet. The first detective who called sounded tired and civil. He told us fraud cases like these were messy, jurisdictional. But he also said 2 important things. 1. Multiple victims across states made it federal-worthy, and 2. Investigators loved a sting with corroborated financial trails. So we built a sting. The plan was surgical. Use Hannah's access to trace funds outward, identify intermediary accounts, and document transactions in real time. Mia's cousin would stand by to capture metadata and IP logs. We'd hand everything to the detective when he asked for the proof that tied the fake aliases to actual cash flow. If we did this right, we'd freeze accounts and force a raid. If we did it wrong, we would tip him off and he'd vanish. We also set an emotional snare. Hannah insisted she could get him to show his face. He'd owed her, she said, be able to resist coming to collect on promises. We were skeptical, but she had a way of speaking like someone who could still access the code of his compulsions. He always answers when something feels like a score, she told us, voice flat. He wants the win. So we staged it. A fake payout, small enough to attract him but big enough to leave a trail. We'd make it look like one of his shell LLCs was paying out to a vendor, an arrangement he'd used before. Leela created a vendor site. I wrote flattering investor emails. Sasha seeded a faux social media post to bait his ego. Mia arranged the tech side so the IP logs pointed to a Phoenix coffee shop he'd been seen at in Street View, close enough that the detective could plausibly coordinate surveillance. We set the date. We booked a nearby hotel room under a fake name and told the detective our plan in strict terms: no arrests without paperwork. He agreed to sit on the evidence and act if the funds moved through the accounts we'd flagged. We were careful, nervous, terrified. The night before the operation, Hannah called me in private and said quietly, "I'll go first. I want to hear him say it to my face." I asked what she meant, and she didn't answer. Instead, she sent one line of text that made my skin crawl. "He owes me more than money. He owes me the truth." That was when the plan got personal in a way none of us had expected. We thought we had him. God, I still hear the fake confidence in my own voice when I describe the plan, like it was proof I wasn't terrified. We'd done everything by the book: burner phones, burner emails, IP logs, the bank login from Hannah, the detective on notice. We taped ourselves to the timeline like desperate surgeons trying to stitch a wound closed. The day of the sting, my chest was so tight I could barely breathe. We sat in a hotel room 2 blocks from the Phoenix coffee shop Leela had pinpointed, Mia and Sasha on the couch, Leela beside them, Hannah in the chair like she'd been carved out of steel. We watched the detective's car parked across the street. He waved once, small, almost invisible, and then the waiting began. We'd arranged for the fake payout to move at 2:15 p.m. The goal wasn't to nab him with cash in hand. It was to record the transfers, the routing, the IPs, and then pass it to federal prosecutors so they'd have jurisdiction and a warrant. Simple, clean, legal. At 2:18 my phone buzzed, the transfer hit. I felt light for a second, like oxygen had finally reached my lungs. Then the logs Mia pulled up showed the money routing through an intermediary account we'd flagged. The detective whispered into his radio to confirm the surveillance team move in. We held our breath. What happened next happened in minutes, and then became a slow, horrid crawl of disbelief. The intermediary account was drained, not to a shell company we'd mapped, but to a series of microtransfers that vanished into dozens of debit cards and prepaid accounts. It was like the money had dissolved. Mia's cousin froze on the laptop, cursing low. "He's siphoning through Ring accounts," he said. "This is a professional laundering chain." Then our detective's face changed. He got pale, then angry, then remote. His phone went to voicemail. The surveillance car idling across the street pulled away like nothing had happened. We looked at one another, and a single, sick thought threaded through our heads. Someone tipped him off. We didn't know who. We only knew it wasn't us. The next blow was quieter but worse. At 3:05 p.m., my email dinged. It was from an unnamed account with a photograph attached. A screenshot from the resort the week before, the exact room where I'd sat with the $12,843 notice glowing on my laptop. The photo had been taken from the hallway. My face was in it. The message: "Nice try, you're clever, he taught you well." Then his voice, recorded, smug, came through on another file. It was him, laughing, saying the same line he'd told me in that hotel. "It's just business, sweetheart." The audio was threaded with details only someone inside his operation could know. The fake LLC name Leela had created, the burner phone numbers, even the detective's badge number. We were being played. Not just by him, by someone inside the system. That night we learned the worst part. The detective we'd trusted had no clearance to run cross-state stings. He'd been moonlighting, selling intel to people like Ryan for months. He'd been the leak. He'd taken a payout, tipped Ryan, and used our sting as a rehearsal for a theft that would leave no trace. I sat on the hotel room floor with my head between my knees and felt a new kind of rage. The cold, hollow kind. This wasn't just about money anymore. He'd turned our attempt to take him down into a map of our vulnerabilities. He'd seen our faces, logged our IPs, probably traced our real names and addresses from mistakes we'd made when typing under stress. We weren't just victims of a serial con man. We were targets now. Hannah stared at us without blinking. "I told you I could make him come," she said. Her voice was small, but something in it had shifted, no longer steel but a brittle edge. "I didn't know it would go like this." And then, from the speaker on my laptop, a new message loaded, a single line of text from an account that used one of his many aliases. "You should have left well enough alone. See you soon." I shut the laptop. The room felt cold, like the air had been replaced with ice. We had pushed at the wrong part of the machine, and the machine had pushed back. We had no idea how deep he went. We had no idea what he was actually collecting. All we knew was that this was no longer a con about money. It felt like something far darker, and that we had just made it personal enough for him to notice. 2 days later, I got the call that changed everything. It wasn't from Mia or Sasha or any of the women. It was from a blocked number. The voice on the other end wasn't Ryan's. It was older, slower, calmer. A man introduced himself as Agent Marcus Rivera from the Department of Financial Crimes. He said they'd received our packet of evidence through the fraud reporting portal. "You did good work," he said, voice steady. "But you're not dealing with a simple romance scammer. You've stumbled into an organized laundering network." My pulse spiked. He asked me to confirm the name Ryan Hale, then Dylan Reese, then Evan Blake. Each time I said yes. He was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Those are all dead men. He's been using the identities of deceased people since at least 2017. I remember whispering, "Dead," and him replying, "Social security records." He picks real names, tweaks a digit, builds an identity from the fragments. "Your husband is a ghost with stolen skin." And then he told me the part that made my blood run cold. The wives weren't just about money. We were proof of life. Each of us legitimized a different identity, legal marriages, shared accounts, co-signed documents. It gave his stolen names real-world validation. The honeymoons weren't rewards, they were harvesting trips. He'd use our passports, photos, and signatures to anchor his fake profiles in federal systems. We weren't people to him. We were identity templates. That's why he never hit big and disappeared. He didn't need a score. He needed circulation, new credit, new records, new wives. Every few months, he'd retire one, cash out her name, and move to another. When Rivera said it, I actually gagged. He wasn't just stealing money. He was building self-portraits out of human lives. I asked how far it went. Rivera hesitated before saying, "We think your friend Hannah may have been helping him recruit." I told him she'd turned on Ryan. He said, "Maybe. Or maybe she's making you believe that so she can rebuild the operation while he disappears. He's always used a partner, a handler to test loyalty. She fits the pattern." And just like that, the ground fell out again. I hung up, shaking. I didn't know what to believe. I replayed every conversation with Hannah, the little pauses, the way she always knew the next step, how she found evidence no one else could. Then came the email. It was from her. Subject line, "He was right." The body said, "You think you can catch him, but you never understood. We weren't victims, Ava. We were inventory. You were the only one who actually loved him, and that's why he picked you for the last rotation. He wanted to see if he could make someone like you break and still come back. He says he knows you will." Attached was a photo, me from years ago, before him, smiling in my apartment, one I'd never posted anywhere. He'd had access to my life long before I met him. That's when I realized the real reason for all of it. He wasn't conning for cash. He was testing control, seeing how far he could shape a person's life, identity, and choices before erasing them. We were case studies in emotional engineering. He did it because he could. because it proved he could rewrite people the same way he rewrote names, histories, and lives. When I told Mia and Sasha, they both cried. Leela didn't say a word. She just packed her bag and said, "If he's testing loyalty, let's show him what betrayal feels like." That's when our revenge stopped being about justice. It became about ending him. I kept thinking revenge would feel like a roar. It didn't. It felt like a long, sharp plan executed until there was nothing left of him that anyone would believe. After Agent Rivera called, things moved in a way that made me both relieved and hollow. He told us that the federal team had been watching a slice of the laundering network for months, but they needed something airtight, direct ties between Ryan's aliases and real-world identities. That's where our chaos became their case. Our emails, the asset rotation spreadsheet, the photos, the fake payouts, all of it was the missing proof. And then Hannah did something no one expected. She handed over the last password, access to his primary shell account, the one that routed money into those microtransfers. She sat with us in a diner and slid a crumpled paper across the table like she was passing contraband. For a second, I wanted to throw it in her face. Then I looked at the faces around me, Mia, Sasha, Leela, and I realized I wanted him ended, not her punished. Hannah told us the truth she hadn't before. She had cut him out months back, but she'd also been approached by Rivera under immunity negotiations. She'd come to hate what they made together. She'd been waiting for the exact day he'd slip up so she could give the feds a clean line. That was the twist, been both architect and whistleblower. She was guilty, and she'd paid her price to win us something bigger than cash, closure. Rivera used Hannah's access to trace the laundering chain into a Phoenix safe house. They coordinated quietly, real professionals, nothing like the corrupt local cop we'd tangled with. On the day they moved in, we sat in a cramped observation room with coffee gone cold and hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Federal agents took his keys and his phone. They cuffed him in a parking lot that, 2 years ago, would have been his playground. He looked at us like we were the punchline of a joke he'd told for too long. We watched press releases over and over, like a ritual. The department seized multiple LLCs, froze accounts, and filed charges for identity theft, wire fraud, and money laundering. The prosecutors praised our packet, the women who didn't know one another until a spreadsheet forced them together. They called it a coordinated victim-led disruption. I liked that phrase. It felt true. Legally, the state moved to dissolve his sham marriages where possible. Banks reversed several fraudulent charges. The resort refunded my card after they handed over the receipts. The federal team arranged restitution hearings where I sat across from men in suits reading line items that used my name like a ledger. They didn't hand me back the time he stole, but they returned enough to get my passport back and to cover the nightmare he'd left me with. Emotionally, revenge was messier. I watched Hannah testify in court. She spoke like someone who'd swallowed her part of the shame and was clawing it back with truth. That was another twist. She didn't disappear into anonymity. She stayed, faced the women she'd helped hurt, and answered for it. There was no cinematic face stab or scream-filled showdown. There was paperwork, subpoenas, hard questions. It felt small and enormous at once. Months later, sitting at a brunch with the 4 women who'd become my strange, chosen family, I realized the payback wasn't just him in cuffs. It was that we remembered ourselves. We rebuilt credit lines, closed loopholes, filed civil suits that drained every last shell company account we could touch. We published our story with a reporter who didn't sugarcoat it. People read it. Donors helped those still struggling. A college fund that might have been stolen was secured for the single mom he'd targeted next. The final kicker came at sentencing. He tried to look defiant in court. The judge didn't indulge him. The sentence was long enough to be justice and short enough to leave him thinking about the years he wasted. As he was led away, he caught my eye. He mouthed the same line he'd once used like a mantra. "It's just business." I laughed, loud, ugly, and clean. The sound surprised me. When they closed the court, I stepped outside into sunlight and felt the light catch on my ring. It looked different now, smaller, like a thing I'd survived. I touched it, then sent a text to the group. "Never again." They replied with laughing emojis and a photo of coffee cups clinking. I still have nightmares. I still wake up angry. But there's also this. I'm the same woman who got conned, only smarter, angrier, and less likely to let anyone write my name in a spreadsheet again. The last line on the public record read, convicted, restitution ordered, and in my head I added one more, filed under lessons learned.